Vice President for Mission and Ministry. I'm the one that sort of always stays in the background. But this is the one time that I sort of get pushed into the foreground in Mission and Ministry because I'm chair of the selection committee for the Smith Fellowship Program. This is the fourth summer, this past summer, that we have sent students abroad for study or service. This past summer, we had 7 all told, and it brought the grand total in 4 summers to 22, which is pretty credible for a program that's, you know, just still getting off the ground. When we send students abroad for study or service, the entire cost is borne by donations from trustees of Providence College and one former trustee, and their generosity has been great. And I can even say that for next summer, I've got most of the money already in the restricted account. So if they remain as generous as that, we know we always have a future in the Smith Fellowship Program. 7 of our students went abroad this summer. You're going to meet 5 of them, although you probably know them already. The first up is Beatrice Forster, who with Laura Wells, who presented yesterday at noontime, were our 2 representatives going to Blackfriars Hall at the University of Oxford. They spent time with the English Dominican friars, who are a relatively wacky bunch. We're just strange here. They're definitely wacky. Mark Noel, our dean, is a product of the English Dominican friars. That's, yeah, it's starting to make sense. That's where he met the Dominicans in Leicester. We won't be hearing tonight from Emily Foster. That's without an R. Emily went to Geneva and worked with the Dominican NGO office at the United Nations and participated in the summer council over there on, what was the exact thing? Anyway, one of the major United Nations conferences this summer. We will hear from Emily Core and Joe Slattery, who went off to Sydney, Australia for 6 weeks and worked with the Dominican Sisters of Eastern Australia. Emily was involved in educational things, and Joe was involved more with healthcare things. They had a splendid summer, and great reports came back here about their work and what they had accomplished. And finally, this evening, we'll hear from Claire Carroll and Kayla McKernan, who also, after Joe and Emily had left Sydney, flew off to Sydney, spent 10 days there, and then went on to Malaita Island in the Solomon Islands. You could say, I mean, to get to the Solomon Islands is a long trip. Australia is long enough, but to go on to the Solomons. And they spent 4 weeks there working with the Dominican sisters, especially the native Dominican sisters there, and Bishop Chris Cardone, who's a graduate of Providence College, class of 1980, went off as a young Dominican priest of our province on loan to the Dominicans in Australia, was sent to the Solomon Islands, and a few years later became a bishop. He was about 36, I think, when he became a bishop. And in his T-shirt and cutoffs and real tall mitre, he looked pretty strange. But when he's paddling from island to island, that's what he wears, his cutoffs and his T-shirt. So it's a different style of bishop. So I'm going to ask you to welcome 5 of our 7 Smith scholars. I've seen most of their presentations already. Very good. They will let us know what their experience was and how they have already benefited from it. This is their payback. We sent them abroad they have to come back and talk about it. So we hope you'll enjoy it. Next Tuesday at 7 and next Wednesday at 5:30, we will have the Smith Fellowship information sessions for next summer. I think the word is getting out. So anyone who's interested in experiencing something like that or developing something totally new, I'd invite you to come back for one of those. So let's welcome Beatrice.
Okay. The Oxford Scholar setting Chesterton at Blackfriars. I'd like to start out by thanking the Father Smith Fellowship Committee for the honor of setting at Oxford for the summer. And for any of you who are thinking about applying, I'd encourage you to do so because merely the opportunity of applying is a privilege and a blessing, so I'd encourage all of you to do so. If I had to characterize my experience with just one word, I definitely use wonder. Here's a picture of sunset in Oxford on our very first evening. So here's part of the skyline of Oxford, kind of familiar with beauty of the architecture. So what's so wonderful about Oxford? I'd say it's because Oxford is a place of so many things that come together: history, culture, academics, faith, friendship. And especially because in Oxford, education isn't just about training. It's not just about, let's get you a job. Instead, it's about the whole person. It's about your body and your soul. So here we have Laura modeling for us at a hat shop. So they still have those in England. And then here is Carfax Tower. That's the oldest edifice in Oxford. Bottom right, Corpus Christi procession. And then bottom left, there I am reading in the Blackfriars Library. Here's a picture of Blackfriars of all of the students who take classes at Blackfriars Hall in Oxford, as well as some of the Dominicans. And it's really interesting because the way Blackfriars works is that it's a studium. So Dominicans in formation are studying there as well as lay people, and they earn degrees in philosophy, theology, and also a joint degree in philosophy, political science, and economics. So first point, history. St. Dominic himself founded Oxford in 1221. So unfortunately, this portal welcoming us to Blackfriars is not from the Middle Ages because of the Reformation, the dissolution of the monasteries and so forth by Henry VIII. So instead, this was only reestablished in the 1920s. Next we have culture. So there's so many cultural activities that happen in England with which we're really unfamiliar. So over here we have dinner at the Blackfriars Ball. And of the approximately 30 colleges in Oxford, all of them have an end-of-the-year ball. And then other picture here, this is inside the Blackfriars Chapel, and this is a Jubilee concert, since we were in England for the Jubilee year. This is a little bit less formal. One typical activity in Oxford is punting. And so here we have Laura, who was definitely the expert. I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever. We were alone, though, so it's okay. No one saw us. It's fine. So this is kind of a Cambridge-Oxford navigating the river activity. Other British things that we saw going on were croquet and cricket, boat races. So academics, big part of Oxford. And this is a part of Oxford both formally, because you're a student, but also very informally. So top left, here's a picture of the library in Blackfriars. 3 stories, theology and philosophy only, which for those of us who love those subjects is wonderful. And then here we have, bottom picture, this is called Blackwell's, and this is the largest bookstore in the world. So we have books going to the basement and various blocks, and this is just has books on anything you can imagine, and I'm sure that anyone could find books that interest them. I'm sure that all of us are familiar with this publishing house, the Oxford University Press. We've had to read them for Civ. So there's a store just devoted to these publications in Oxford. So why did I go to Oxford? I went to study G.K. Chesterton's Apologetics, and specifically I had 2 questions going in. Firstly, I was asking, what kind of impact did Chesterton's rational arguments in favor of Christianity make on the world of academia at the beginning of the 20th century, especially at Oxford? So going into Oxford, just walking around, you see all these things that are associated with famous people like Evelyn Waugh, C.S. Lewis, and it's funny because these are people who were very heavily influenced by Chesterton, by works like Orthodoxy, The Everlasting Man, in which he's defending Christianity. So we can see in their works the fruits of Chesterton's works. And then also, one of the main Catholic churches in Oxford is the Oxford Oratory, and they're working on bringing together a G.K. Chesterton library that will be opened in the fall right now, but I'm not there. So clearly, Chesterton's very much alive still in Oxford. Next, I was wondering, has Oxford disintegrated into the sad phenomenon that has come to characterize so many American universities, which is secularism and even blatant anti-religion? So maybe I thought the answer was yes, because so many universities in America, in Europe, are secular. But I actually found that Oxford was quite the contrary. It wasn't secular at all. In fact, it's one of the most Orthodox places in England, the most Catholic places, and even lots of Anglican churches. Most of the schools in Oxford are actually Anglican. So I was very pleasantly surprised on that score. So Oxford is unique in the sense that they have tutorials instead of the formal classroom setting we're used to in America. In the tutorial setting, you meet with your tutor once a week. You sign up for 2 tutorials, and it's a one-on-one session in which you read a paper. So it's a discussion instead of a lecture. And these are the works of Chesterton that I read during my tutorials. And I was so fortunate as not only to study Chesterton, but to visit his house with Laura, which is in Beaconsfield, right outside of London. And here is his, when Laura and I were wandering into this graveyard, she asked me, she's like, Beatrice, how are you gonna know which one it is? And then I told her, Laura, I've seen pictures, don't worry, it's really obvious. And it's that one, really obvious, kind of very different from the other ones. And another unique thing about my tutorials in particular was that usually your tutor will be in Oxford in the campus, so you'll just go and meet with him. But my tutor is a Catholic parish priest, so I actually travel to him, and he lives in this charming town called Burford, which is in the countryside around Oxford, the Cotswolds. So here's the main street, just like one main street with these very British things like a hat shop and bakery. And then here is the oldest church in the town. So next, faith. This is a picture of the Oxford Oratory of St. Aloysius. Now, for any of you who are familiar with Brideshead Revisited, Aloysius should ring a bell as being Sebastian's teddy bear. And so Evelyn Waugh came up with that because he went to St. Aloysius Church, so that's pretty cool. Tolkien also attended here, so if you're a fan of the Inklings at all, Oxford is totally covered with places that they met, places that they studied, places that they taught. And here's just some more beautiful stained glass windows from Oxford. And each college has its own chapel for the most part, especially the older ones. And so for the Anglican ones, which are the majority, they have a tradition called evensong, in which it's basically the Protestant equivalent of evening prayer. And it's very elaborate, sung, happens multiple times a week. So we were able to attend that and enjoy that thoroughly. This is, the picture of St. Dominic here is actually from Blackfriars in London that we also visited. Friendship. So one of the groups that was very unique to Oxford that we were really happy to be a part of was called the Aquinas Study Group. And this was actually founded around one of the student brothers, Brother Nick, studying with some of the students. And so what this involved was meeting weekly, having food, studying Aquinas, praying Compline, And this is something that Laura and I have brought back here. So that's really cool. So it's not like you are confined to just stay in Oxford. Quite the contrary. There's so much to do in England. You can go back so many times, and there's so much that we still want to see and go back. And so here I am in Bath, and then Laura is in Stratford-upon-Avon, so it's Shakespeare's birthplace. And we got to see a play and visit the various Shakespeare-related locations. Here we are with Big Ben in London. And then fans of the show Downton Abbey will recognize this building. This is called Highclere Castle. So also not far away at all from Oxford. And transportation is very easy. You can either take a train, bus. Most people bike everywhere, so that's an option too. Reflecting on Oxford, I have a Chesterton quote. He says, talking about great men, that the real great man is the man who makes every man feel great. And I think that we can apply that to the University of Oxford. And so the reason why I think Oxford is so great is because it makes us all feel great in the sense that it's promoting an education that educates us wholly, body and soul, and because it's seeking the truth. So that's why I think that we can all agree that Oxford is so great. So after we were done in Oxford, we spent 5 days in Portugal, in Lisbon, and then afterwards on pilgrimage to Fatima. And I'd just like to conclude. This is a picture of Christ Church, kind of one of the most familiar buildings of Oxford. And since I studied Chesterton, I'd like to cite him once again. He said that when he was little, he used to take a certain book with pictures of old Dutch houses and think not of what was in the pictures, but of all that was out of the pictures. The unknown corners and side streets of the same quaint town. So this is just to say that I have definitely not told you everything about Oxford. There's so much that I have left out. And that's a good thing, because can you imagine all the things that I haven't included? And that's great that there's so much that transcends the frame of this picture. And you guys should keep asking questions and apply.
Should all know that all of our Smith Fellows this summer wrote blogs. And those blogs are easily accessible, from the Smith Fellowship webpage on providence.edu. You just click on Catholic and Dominican, go to the landing page, scroll down a few lines, and you're going to find the Father Smith Fellowship program, and all the blogs are there. I was hoping that I could get these presentations there soon, but our web pages are under intense redevelopment right now. But for those who are going to be applying for Smith Fellowships, I will make those links available next week. Does anyone have any questions for Beatrice?
Absolutely, that was the same sculptor that made, right.
And from her descriptions,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell us about starting your little Aquinas study group here?
Sure. So we've started this Aquinas study group that meets on Tuesdays from 6 to 8. And if any of you are interested, you should email me or Laura. And so we're trying to reproduce something similar, although we can't quite reproduce the last part, that is going to a pub. We don't really have the same kind of culture here. So that part is lacking.
You could try one of the local bars. Wouldn't have quite the same.
Yeah, I don't think so.
very much, Laura. I'm now inviting forward Emily Corr and Joe Slattery to talk about their experience in Australia. You'll take that?
Okay, so as Father said, I'm Joe Slattery, and I'm a senior here, bio major. So part of what I did with my fellowship is set up kind of a healthcare-related service. So this is different than Beatrice, where she did a study. We both did service trips. So.
And my name's Emily Corr. I'm also a senior. I'm a social science major and a theology minor. And my time in Sydney consisted of serving in education and pastoral ministries.
So this was actually the first day we got there. So, of course, Australia is pretty far away. So in addition to the 5 hours to the west coast, you take a 14-hour trip down to Australia or across to Australia or whatever. And so we're pretty jet-lagged or whatever, but first day you can't really sleep because you are on a different schedule and everything. So we settled in for a little bit, but then right away we went out to the coast. So we did what's called the Bronte to Bondi Beach walk. So up there at the top is the beach. So it's pretty famous. That's where they had the beach volleyball at the Sydney Olympics. And it was just really cool to kind of get out and start seeing sights right away. We really were just amazed. I mean, that picture says it all. We're in Australia. Like, it was pretty nuts. And then the two girls up in the picture at the top are Sarah Vicari and Rachel Powell, and they were our homestay sisters, respectively. So Sarah was my family, and then Rachel was in Emily's.
So we got into our service pretty quickly. By day 3, we were both at our service sites, and I was really fortunate to have found 2 places to really work at consistently. One was St. Lucy's, which I'll go over in a little more detail later, but the other one was Santa Sabina College, which was in the town we were staying in. It was a nice 10-minute walk from our homestay, and that's the main building. It's pretty incredible. It was founded by Irish Dominican nuns in the early 1900s, and now today is a K-12 all-girls day school. I was really fortunate to work mostly with the high school girls, mostly year 11, and I helped teach history and religion courses. And then I spent one day at the elementary school helping with the kindergarten and 4th grade classes. And it was just a really cool experience to work both on the faculty and both kind of be treated as a student as well. I got to go to morning tea with the professors and then go to lunch in the courtyard with the students. So it was a nice mix of both worlds.
Yeah, so just to clarify, college over there is high school, so it was a high school, not a college like ours. And so this, I think, was the first weekend. Again, we got to do some sightseeing once again. You can't go to Australia without seeing some Australian animals. So we went out to a nature preserve, and those 2 girls are POW girls who Emily stayed with. So their mom was nice enough to take us out, and we got to see all types of Australian animals. Kangaroos, koalas, that's all we have there. But there were wombats, Tasmanian devils, all kinds of birds and things like that. So again, another thing like, wow, we're in Australia. I had a blast.
And then we capped that weekend off with seeing like the 2 main Sydney landmarks, which were the Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge, which is in the top picture. And it was just really incredible. It was such a rainy first 3 weeks there, but we didn't let that stop us from doing a lot of sightseeing. And there we are in the bottom with our homestay families. That's Laura Vicari in the middle, who Joe stayed with.
Oh, so some of my service, up in the top is a sister from Malta, Dominican sister. So she ran the local nursing home. And so I went there for a day. I worked with her, kind of did administrative things, met her staff, talked with the residents, kind of saw what was going on there. And then down in the corner, the other corner, we have all these ladies are Aboriginal women. And so just a little bit of history. The around the coast is really what's populated mostly in Australia, but then Aboriginal people has settled all of Australia, so the middle and then the outsides as well. But they've traditionally had a lot of problems with the local people, and so these women kind of got together, decided they wanted to do something for their people, so kind of pooled their resources, have meetings. They're called the Babane women, and so they kind of take care of local problems. So I went and kind of sat in on one of their meetings, gave some advice, helped them set up a little bit of their web page. It was really cool to just meet these women that kind of took initiative and decided, with the help of the Dominican sisters, Sister Rosemary's up in the corner there by the woman in blue, to really get something done in their own community.
One really memorable day we had was Sister Rosemary took us to the University of Sydney, which is right downtown, and we met Father Paul Rouse, who was our first encounter with a Dominican friar since we were at PC, and that was really exciting. And he took us over to the JP2 Center, which is kind of like their campus ministry center for the university, and it was the first, for me, it was the first taste of home I had gotten since arriving. We walk in, and there's students everywhere. It's finals week. They're rummaging through the fridge, throwing their backpacks down, chatting, talking politics, talking nonsense. And I was like, I feel like I'm in the chapel basement now. It was just such a comfortable environment. People were so friendly with us. And then what was really great was it's actually where a former Smith Fellow worked 2 summers ago, Leah Santilli, and they all remembered who she was. So that was really rewarding to be able to talk with these people that knew Leah, and we were able to say, oh, we come from the same school, same program. Yeah, it was just a very rewarding day.
Yeah, definitely for me, it just hit me from that day and from some of the previous days, just the meaning of community that I really felt down there. I mean, we stayed with homestay families who really welcomed us in. I went to that nursing home where the residents were very close, and then we went here where all the people in the chaplaincy there were very close. And it was a huge reminder of what I have in my life with community, and it just made me appreciate that all the more.
So finally the sun came out after about 3 weeks in Sydney.
It rained for 2 weeks solid.
So Joe and I took the advantage, and we decided to do some real sightseeing. And one of the great advantages of this fellowship was that we had the benefit of staying with families, so they got to show us around. But then we also had the opportunity to go sightseeing on our own. And one morning we hopped on a train, grabbed a map, and said, let's just go exploring. And we walked all the way over the Harbor Bridge, around this marina, over to the Opera House, and then through the Botanical Gardens. And it was just a wonderful day of doing very, very touristy things.
Yeah, really one of the best parts is that you do plan the trip, so you can plan a day off to go visit Sydney, or some of the other kind of touristy things that we did there. So it's really cool to be able to talk with the contact you have, tell them what you're hoping to do, and also even researching it yourself and kind of saying, oh, while I'm there, I definitely want to make this happen because it might be the last time I'm able to do something like that. So a little more of our service. This is both from St. Lucy's. So St. Lucy's is a school started by the Dominicans that was originally for blind children, but now they take in any disadvantaged children, mentally, physically. And so I went there for a day. Emily went there for, I think, 5 or 6 days. And so in my one day, I got to work with the 5th and 6th grade students. And I just remember having a blast with them, just kind of jumping right in, helping out however I could, teaching them kind of how to be social, working with the teacher. They threw me an impromptu birthday party. The teacher just was like, it's your birthday, and I was like, okay, happy birthday to me. And we kind of taught them how to do that. And I just remember it just being a great experience to work with these kids who, you know, had some trouble, but not if you show them the love and the support that the volunteers there were doing, then it's all easy and everything fits together there.
Yeah, as Joe said, this was my other main service project for my time in Sydney. And just after going between here and Santa Sabina and working with the young children there, what really struck me was how when I was at Santa, the kids would right away recognize my accent, and then the questions would start. Do you know celebrities? Where are you from? Oh, you're from New York. You must be rich. Like little things. Do they have yellow school buses? Apparently they don't have them in Australia. But when at St. Lucy's, the children, you know, didn't pick up on my accent, and they didn't pick up that I was different. I was just another hand to hold, another lap to sit on, another person to help them skip class and run and go play on the playground. So they were just so, it was a great reminder that, you know, we have differences between us, but that's no reason to treat each other too differently. So by week 4, Joe and I went our separate ways, and we took on 2 different projects. I stayed in the Sydney area, and I went on a retreat with the Santa Sabina students, the year 11 girls, and we went off to what they call the bush, which is what we call the boonies, and we had a 3-day retreat, and the theme was Be Still and Know That I Am God. And the goal was to really teach the girls how to prayerfully discern what they're supposed to be doing in 2 years, you know, going on to university and finding their careers, but also discovering a little more about themselves. And even though I was leading the retreat, I got just as much out of it. I learned a lot about myself, and it was a really great opportunity to take a personal retreat from my own fellowship and really reflect on how much had happened in the 3 weeks before.
So while Emily was on her retreat, I actually took a trip down to Melbourne, which is down south. This is where the Dominican Friars Priory was, so like the priory we have on campus, that's where theirs was. So I actually got to stay with the friars and stay with the seminarians. I did a little bit of work. I stopped at a school one day, but mostly was able to utilize this time for kind of some spiritual growth. I went to evening and morning prayer every day, daily mass with the brothers and the friars. Really had some great discussions about being a friar, about just Catholicism in general. So it was a really great experience, a good kind of step back from some of the work to grow a little bit more spiritually.
Joe also got caught in an earthquake when he was in Melbourne.
Yeah, there was a 5.2 scale earthquake while I was there, so that added a lot of excitement to the week there. So our homestay families were really great. They treated us to some of the sports that they have in Australia, which, just so you know, the country is sports crazy, like nuts. Like, you think it's bad here, it's probably 10 times worse there, or better, whatever you think. So down here is the rugby state of origin. That's pretty much as big as our Super Bowl. And then up there is Australian football, neither of which I could really explain to you that well. They kind of have no rules similar to things here. But it was just another way that we kind of got immersed into the culture, learned.
So for week 5, we hopped in a car with Sister Rosemary, who was our primary contact, and we drove to Canberra, which is the capital of Australia, and we spent a week there. Our main goal was to go to Australian Catholic University and learn a little bit more about their campus ministry down there, but it kind of turned into something new. When we first got there, we met Nick, who is the second from the left, and he's the ACU campus minister, and he took us back to the diocese office, and we met the whole youth ministry team there. And the rest of the week, they took us under their wing. We went out to the movies, we went out for fish and chips, watched TV in their apartments. they took us sightseeing. They took us to Parliament House, which is right there. Really just showed us around, and then we got to help them plan a conference that they were about to have, which again, for me, reminded me so much of all the work we do in campus ministry here. And so just as I was starting to miss home, there was another positive reminder of all the great things that I love about PC. So we actually took some time to have some fun also. We had one free weekend right in the middle of our trip, and so we flew up to Cairns, which is on the north. It's in Queensland, so it's in the tropical part of Australia. And we did a rainforest tour, and we went snorkeling at the Great Barrier Reef. Like, when you're in Australia, you have to go and take advantage of it. And so when we went on our rainforest tour, we were led by a tour guide named Cuz Rohan, and he was probably the funniest man I've ever met. And we just had a day full of swimming and exploring and hiking, good food, good laughs. We got to slide down a waterfall rock slide. I've never done that before. You can see Joe doing it on his back. Yeah, it was just an incredible experience. I'll never forget it.
No big deal. And so these two at the top are also from the rainforest. But in the corner is one of our only pictures from the Great Barrier Reef, which we got to do on that Saturday. So we went out to Green Island, which is about 50 miles out off the coast of Australia. We rented some snorkeling gear and just spent the day kind of diving in and out, looking at the tropical waters. So it's kind of everything you've seen in pictures with the bright coral, the bright fish, but completely different because you're actually there, like following this fish. Like you see something and you want to follow it over. You get scared out of your pants when there's like this big snake thing down right below you, and you're just like freaking out, and then you forget that you can't breathe when you have water in your snorkel, and yeah, bad. But it was really a lot of fun, even though we got roasted by the sun because neither of us thought to bring sunscreen. It was still a really great weekend, a good break from the work.
Towards the end of our trip on the last week, we went up to Newcastle, which happens to be the largest coal port in the world, and we worked with Sister Diana, who Sister Rosemary referred us to, and she runs a refugee ministry where they basically serve mostly African families that have come over and really need help settling down. They offer everything from English classes to citizenship exam classes to sewing and stitching, and they have a food pantry. It was just really great to play with the kids while the moms were in class, or I helped one woman study for her citizenship exam, which helped me learn a little more about the country. But
yeah, the big thing is refugees. They get a lot of people coming in on boats every day. So a lot of times those refugees, if they are accepted, which is a problem, they have a lot of trouble kind of finding places to live, keeping places to live. So the Sister Di is really instrumental, and she's in charge of this refugee house. And then she helps people get houses, get furniture, pay off bills, kind of finance, things like that. Anything they need, she kind of has an answer for. So we just helped her out that way.
To cap everything off, I know for myself, I can really say that my homestay families and Joe's really made my trip what it was. Every single day that I would come home from my service, the girls would be there. I lived in a home with 4 sisters and mom and dad and a dog, and they would always just like give me hugs and say, "How was your day? What'd you do?" And I don't have any sisters, so it was just really incredible. And even just down to the language that they use, they'd always say, "Oh, mom wants you to do this." They would never say, "Oh, my mom wants you to do this." And it just made the biggest difference in the world. I really just felt like I was part of the family, and that really helped me to avoid ever feeling homesick. And I know for me, I thought my biggest challenge would probably be missing home or not knowing what to do with things, but the biggest challenge is actually accepting this hospitality that they offered. It was just it was overwhelming, and I finally realized I'm here to serve, but also it's okay to take love in and learn a little bit from it.
So this is Sister Rosemary. She was our primary contact for our trip. She was pretty much the best person ever. She arranged all the service we did. So Emily did those two things, mostly the Santa Sabina School and St. Lucy's. But me, I had to be difficult. I had to do like 15 different service things, like one day at each. So I did all kinds of medical and schools and things like that. And Sister really contacted all those people for me, kind of was a reference for me, for us, and set everything up. Got our homestay families set up, and just really was a lifesaver with that. We definitely couldn't have done the trips without it. She did our trip. She also did arrange the trip for Kayla and Claire. So unfortunately, like the day before we left, she actually took a fall, broke her arm, so that's why she's in the cast there. But we couldn't have done it without her. She was the best.
And thank you for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us now, email us, or visit our blogs, which are right there.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Joe. Why don't you stay here? Anybody have questions for them? I must have been perfectly clear. They mentioned very lovingly Sister Rosemary Kinney, who truly is a blessing. She has really taken on the Smith Fellowship program down there in Sydney. We couldn't ask for a better collaborator because this year she took both programs, the Sydney program and then the Sydney Alki program, in hand, and as Joe said, made all of the plans, all of the arrangements, all of the contacts, and then just sent the whole thing here. A true blessing for the Smith Fellowship program and for our Smith Fellows down under. She has a wonderful little group of partners in crime in terms of putting this together. The host families are just wonderful, welcoming the PC students into their home and really making them part of the family for whether it be 2 weeks or 6 weeks. And so it really makes it wonderful, for our students to experience life like that truly halfway around the world. So thank you once again. I now welcome Claire Carroll and Kayla McKernan. They started out in Sydney. Well, actually, they started out at the Great Barrier Reef. They then got to Sydney, spent 10 days there, and then on to the Solomon Islands.
All right. All right, hi everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Kayla McKernan. I'm a senior and a psychology and pre-health minor.
And I'm Claire Carroll. I'm a junior. I'm an English major and a business studies minor.
We are just starting off with a short video clip of our time, and then we'll talk about it more in detail. So enjoy.
All right, so now we'll just do a little presentation about what you just saw. You might have some questions, and I think I still do, but. All right, so what was our mission for this fellowship? We were trying to delve into Catholic and Dominican community in Sydney and in the Solomon Islands, and just become one with their culture.
I focused on education while I was there. I felt that was the way I could be most helpful. So in the Solomon Islands, I primarily helped at the schools.
And I am attending physician assistant school next year, so my focus was on healthcare.
So we started off our fellowship with a little personal excursion. Both of us didn't know when the next time we would be able to get back to Australia would be, so we wanted to take advantage of everything. And we spent almost a week in tropical North Queensland, living in the jungle for a couple of days, and then we also went snorkeling and scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef. And it was an incredible way to start things off. And Kayla and I didn't know each other before the trip, so we got to know each other very well in those first few days.
Yeah, so that was a great way to meet each other, scuba diving. That was, Claire's a little better at that than I was, and I think Emily and Joe might have had a safer and better experience than I did. I'm not that good at scuba diving. We found that out. So everything is fine. But after that, we traveled on to Sydney. We were excited to meet our homestay families. And they were all in the same group of friends as Emily and Joe's homestays. So I actually met who they stayed with, and everyone was from the same parish. So I stayed in North Strathfield, right out of Sydney, outside of Sydney, with the Bell family. They have 6 children, and 2 were at home still, 1 my age and 1 at Santa Sabina, the school. So they treated me like their family, and it was a great experience.
And I can say the same. I stayed with the Vasilas. They had a daughter, Rachel, who was 22, and I just became part of the family, did all the activities they did on the weekends and during the week, and they were really awesome, so it made the Sydney experience that much better.
And not to mention, the family I stayed with owned a cafe, so that was about a short walk from their house, so I spent a lot of time there. It was great. And we got the chance to go on little vacations with our families. I went to Gerringong. It's a nice, quaint beach town with a lot of surfers and beautiful countryside. And Claire got a chance to go skiing.
Yeah, I did the opposite. A lot of people were very surprised when they heard my accent that I was from America and I came to Australia to go skiing, but I explained my story. So we had a great time there with them and spending time with their family and friends.
So Emily and Joe touched upon this, well, actually told you everything about Santa Sabina and Sister Rosemary. And we met at the school with Sister Rosemary for preliminary Solomon Island meetings because Sister Rosemary lived and worked in the Solomon Islands with the sisters. So she was giving us background info, which was very helpful, but we had no idea what we were in for. But we met with various faculty and we had orientation to the Solomons. And Sister Rosemary, like they said, is just the best.
We also helped out at Night Patrol, which is a big program that they've been running for a while, and they fill up a truck. It almost looks like an ice cream truck, but it's filled with sandwiches, fruits, snacks, and we went to about 4 different locations in the city of Sydney at night, and different people who are homeless throughout the city would flock to the trucks. And it was great to be able to give them a meal, but they also really just enjoyed speaking with us and having company.
And here's a picture of us and Sister Rosemary in same position, still with a broken arm, very sad, but she was a strong woman. And there's a picture of Claire and I in Canberra, the capital, meeting with an Aboriginal research woman at ACU, Australian Catholic University.
So finally, we were off to our main destination for our trip, which was the Solomon Islands. And our first stop was Tenaroo, and we stayed there for 3 days with Sister Stephanie and Sister Katie. And it was a perfect start to our experience. We got to spend the weekends with them. We went to Mass and get used to the lifestyle. We went to the market one of the days in Honiara, and that's the main city in the entire country. So the market experience was incredible. There's hundreds and hundreds of people there selling what they've grown in their gardens, and it's very busy. And I think Kayla and I were the only white people for miles. So I think it was just as fun for them to look at us as it was for us to see this whole new environment.
Yeah, at first I was very excited to go experience a new setting, and then I realized Sister Stephanie's a very tall woman, and I was kind of like hiding behind her the entire time through the market, going through the aisles, and she was just like, it's fine, it's fine. But we were standing against a wall actually, and someone came by and took a cell phone picture of like our faces. I was like, I hope that's not a good picture. Like, it's not that important. But so here's a picture of Claire and Sister Katie, and the slide didn't come up right, but basically we stayed at their house, which was wonderful, right in a campus, St. Joseph's School, and we took a tour of the classes. It was the weekend, so we didn't have a chance to go in the classroom, but we helped out in the clinic for the first 2 days. So Sister Katie is a nurse, and she gave me the beginnings of my medical experience in the Solomons. She taught me the basics. She showed me her patients, and really, she took her time. It's Solomon time, that's what they call it. So there was a long line of patients that got hit in the head by coconuts or whatever their problem was, and she was just showing me the medicine cabinet like she had all the time in the world. It's like, don't you think we should go address the situation? She was like, they can wait. So it was a great introduction. Couldn't ask for a better introduction.
Our next stop was Visale, which was about a 2-hour drive. And by drive, a lot of times they say how long will it take on a good road and a bad road, because that makes a big difference. So this was, half of the road was good, the other half was bad. It was very unstable, the road. You were driving up and down, and then they were doing construction on a few bridges. So that meant that we drove through the river instead of over it. So we finally got there, and I helped out in the school for the few days that we were there. I was planning to help with the English classes, and I did for the first day, but then I was speaking with one of the teachers, and she mentioned a whole storage room that was full of donated books that were dusty and in boxes and were neglected. No one knew how to organize them. So I took on a little bit of a project, and I wanted to make a library for them. They had bookshelves. So I went into town with Sister Veronica one day, and I bought mats and just supplies that we would need to make it a welcoming room and a good environment for the students. And it was nice because on their breaks, the teachers would come in and help me alphabetize things and sort them out, and the students did as well. So after cleaning out a lot of rat droppings and dust, the room really came together, and they had a little library. And I was very happy to find out when I was coming home that all of the classes now had a library period, and after school they were trying to incorporate it into the after-school activities so the students would have a place to go. English is their third language. Every village has its own language, and then they all speak Pidgin English, and then they speak English. So it's very important for them to have this library with books that are written in English for them to just read and practice and keep continuing their pursuit of education.
And any of you that know Claire know she's very thorough. So of course the library was alphabetized and labeled, and that was amazing. And after I got done with the clinic, I was like trying to hide because she was recruiting me for labeling, and I was like, but no, it was great. So everything's alphabetized, and she even thought of a system in the future to how to add books. So it was incredible. So my time in the clinic was also great. The clinic was actually 20 feet from the ocean, so I heard the waves all day as patients would come in and wait. And I experienced anything just from taking blood pressures of sisters and people from the village with chronic hypertension was the main problem. And just helping out the nurses, getting them supplies, calling people, walking patients back, just bandaging wounds, learning the basics, and pretty much enjoying my time and observing. So probably the most interesting thing that I've seen that's probably not a major problem here was a little boy that was waiting outside for about 5 hours with his mom, and finally asked the nurse, are we going to see the little boy? And she was like, oh yeah, we could bring him in. So we brought him in, and he had a fishing hook stuck in his foot all the way up, just a huge fishing hook. I was like, we should probably get that out. And she's like, yeah. Anyway, so we also, one day, Claire and I were getting a little antsy and wanted to do some exercise, so we recruited some of the village boys to take us up a mountain, and there's a huge mountain in the background of this alley, and I thought we were climbing the little bump before that, but because none of the boys were wearing shoes or anything like that, or pants, so we start walking up. Claire and I put on our sneakers. We're like, this is so exciting. We brought like a little picnic. Little did I know, 2 hours later, up a mountain like this, Claire was like, come on, Kayla, you got it. And I was like, I don't even know what to do. This is crazy. So it was a big joke with the boys because I freaked out a little bit and they were making fun of me, and I really didn't want to misrepresent our country, but I kind of did.
And it was also very funny because we were staying in Sister Veronica's house, and at all of the schools there, the teachers live in a little house next to the school, and from the road, you can see the top of the mountain and like the path that winds up. And so when we got back down, Sister Veronica told us that the whole village was standing in the road watching us go up the whole way, that it was like the best entertainment they had in months, and everyone was there.
And I was so lucky that they couldn't see my actual reaction at the top. And when I realized I had to go back down, which I'm not even going to talk about because I slid down. I just told them I was doing it on purpose when it came to a point where I just sat on a leaf and slid down. But anyway, we're alive. Oh, and the night, I think it was after the mountain climb, Claire and I were in our room, and all of a sudden, Sister Veronica went outside, and I heard this shaking and like pounding on the wall, and I was like, you know, we're trying to sleep. She's being a little rude, pounding on the house and jumping around. She's like, Kayla, I think it's an earthquake. And I threw my books. I ran outside, met Sister Veronica, and she was like, we just had an earthquake. I was like, wow. So it ended up being 6.6 on the Richter scale, so it was pretty big. And after the fact, and when we found out no one was hurt in any of the villages, we were kind of like, wow, that was a great experience. So.
And then our next stop was Auki, and we spent 3 weeks in Auki, and that was the main time in the Solomon Islands. I was lucky enough to work with Sister Loretta, who is a teacher at the school right across the road, and she teaches English, and the first day I went, I was going to shadow her class and then make plans for the next couple of days when I was there. And I showed up into the staff room, and they handed me a textbook, and they said, okay, now you're going to go teach Form 4. So my first day at the school, I was thrown right into the classroom, and I'm very happy that it worked out that way. It was such a unique experience because I got to know so many people in such a short amount of time because I was in the school. I mentioned before that English is their third language, so Form 4 is 16 to 18-year-olds about, and they could understand me. They had a harder time forming sentences themselves, but we worked on grammar and vocabulary, different things like that. And they were very shy in the beginning, but they definitely warmed up to us. And it was great because we also worked with them on weekend activities. It was a boarding school, so on Saturday evenings they would have events. And one Saturday the theme was village dances. So along with every village having its own language, they also have their own dance and a lot of things that are very unique to it. And that day, a few of the girls we made friends with showed us their village dance at the beach, and it was so much fun. And Kayla and I showed up that evening, and they told us that we would be performing it in front of the entire school. So we did the dance with the friends that we made, and I think both of us could have been standing there just not moving, and everyone would think it was hysterical. So imagine us dancing in front of them. They had a great time. So that made the students a lot more comfortable with me because I made a fool of myself in front of them. But so that was some of the better aspects of the school that I really enjoyed.
I think the deputy principal said that we both had talent, so I took that very seriously because that was a specific North Malayan dance. It's very complicated, and we remembered it right offhand, so I was very impressed. So when we arrived in Auki, Claire's actually, her old high school teachers were staying with Bishop Chris, and Brother Roger, her former teacher, said something that stuck out to me. He said that the Solomon Islanders have three things: their family, their community, and their faith. So we really lived that mission while we were there. And each morning, we woke up to the chapel bells rang by Bishop about 5:45, 6 in the morning, and we did morning prayer, evening prayer in the cathedral on Sundays, which was the video you saw, the procession. So that was a great experience because it's their way of life. And while I was there, I worked at Kalufi Hospital, and I worked with doctors Joe, Jason, and Dr. Solomon. Her name is Dr. Solomon. I don't know how it happened, but it's true. And they're the only 3 doctors on the island, so they're very busy, but sometimes they come in late, and it's fine. So I was working there about 2 miles down the road. So I walked there each morning, and I was working with Dr. Solomon, primarily a woman doctor, which is very rare. And she was a great woman. She took me around the children ward and the maternity ward was where I was mostly working. So I did rounds with her in the morning, spoke to all the children. And Tuesday and Thursday were operating theater days, so I got to observe different things going in the operating theater from minor to major surgeries. So that was a great eye-opening experience. And also very impressed with their cleanliness and everything. They were very skilled doctors. And it's great because they still email me sometimes and they say, hello from operating theater day. So it's a great little pickup in the middle of the week for me. And it says special deliveries here. So I'll talk about the first special delivery. One day I was in the children's ward and there were 2 children, Alec and Rebecca, and they had been laid out on the hospital beds each for about 6 weeks. They were like best friends by this point from very far away. And they both had broken legs, probably from, I think, falling out of trees. And they couldn't leave because they were casted all the way up to their hip. And they didn't have crutches to leave, so they were missing school, missing their family. And families have to provide all the food in the hospital, so it was getting pretty tight. And they were also taking up space for other children. So one day I got so frustrated, I was thinking of making crutches out of sticks or something. But I took their measurements, and I just brought it back to Fonua where we were staying with Bishop Chris. And I talked to the builder. His name is Laborio. He built the chapel. And I was like, I drew a picture of crutches. And I was like, do you think you can make something like this? He was like, oh, yeah, probably. And 2 hours later, he came up to me with stained wooden crutches that were beautiful. We stuck a rubber stopper on the bottom and a cloth on the top and brought them to the children that Sunday after Mass. And they left the hospital the next day. So that was the first delivery. Second delivery was more in literal sense, where I was at the hospital the first day getting the tour of the maternity ward. And I asked Dr. Solomon if I was going to have the chance to witness a delivery while I was here. She was like, oh, plenty. There's probably one today. So she checks the room. She goes, oh, someone's in labor now. You can just stay in the room. So I was like, oh, okay. So I was getting used to the whole situation, taking it all in. I've never witnessed that, but I've had medical experience, but not quite like that. So I was standing there kind of like assessing if I was going to pass out or not. I felt fine. So all of a sudden the nurse was like, I'll be right back. I have to get something. So I was the only one in the room with this woman that doesn't speak English in labor. And she made this weird face, and I was like, what's wrong? And I was like, nurse! I just screamed for the nurse. She came in as the baby was being delivered, and we both like caught the baby. And then after, she decided to name it after me, which I think is really worse for the baby than it is for anyone. But I told my mom that she had a grandchild in the Solomon Islands. She was a little confused, but she figured it out, and she read my blog. So that's pretty much that story. That's the second delivery.
In the top left picture, that was one of the Saturdays Bishop Chris brought us to this beautiful beach, and all of the kids around us spent a lot of time in and around the bishop's house and the sister's house. So it was great because they were all around our age, and we became very friendly with them. After school, I'd play soccer with them on the lawn. One of the younger girls in the picture, Charisma, she would wait for me on the path on the way home. She was about 6 years old, and she'd always be hanging around and love to play with Kayla and I. But it was just a perfect way to experience their completely different culture from ours. We got to be in their daily life, and we weren't tourists at all. So that was really great. And then in the top right picture, that's a photo from the cathedral with Sister Matilda and Sister Loretta and Bishop Chris. And their masses, as you saw the procession, I was so stimulated the whole time. It was a wonderful experience for my faith. And just the artwork and everything is so different from ours, and it's so beautiful. And the singing, everything, it was a great way to experience a Mass.
And just to say a little bit more about Bishop Chris and the sisters we stayed with, I have never met 3 nicer people in a better situation in which to live for 4 weeks. Bishop Chris welcomed us off the boat to Maleta with a flower necklace, walked us back, drove us around in the back of his truck. He's a dad to every single kid in Alki, and everyone knows it. He's the town celebrity. And Sister Loretta, I've never met anyone funnier than her. We had the most amazing times just sitting with her as she saved us from the huge rats that ran around at night. She trapped them in buckets, and that was really great. So, and Sister Matilda and Sister Loretta both gave up their rooms for us. And we insisted, no, we're not sleeping in the separate rooms. We'll either sleep in one room or we'll sleep in the sitting room. And they both said no. Sister Loretta slept on the floor the entire time. And they're both angels. And I've never met anyone more sarcastic than Sister Matilda. Took her a while to warm up, but she was honestly hysterical. So she gets a little competitive during card games, though, so you can't beat her. And then at the bottom left is the unfortunate baby named after me and the mother. She's a powerhouse there. And those are the 2 children with the crutches. So that was our time in Auki.
So overall, our experience, it was incredible, and I know Kayla and I could stand up here and tell you so many stories for such a long time. But for me, this Father Smith Fellowship was an unbelievable opportunity to grow in faith, service, and awareness of this wonderful Dominican global community. It's very rare that you have the chance to travel thousands of miles to a third world country and immediately be embraced by this new loving family who has been anticipating your arrival, and they're just so happy for you to be there. I've definitely found a home in the Solomon Islands. It's picture perfect, and the people are so beautiful. Their tradition of generosity is overwhelming. And I can say that they are the happiest people I've ever met, despite their limited finances and resources. They live with faith and their family and community, and that's what's important, and it was an amazing reminder of that. It's amazing how 4 short weeks can totally change your life, and I really look forward to the next time I can go back there. I feel like I have family there, and I need to go visit them. And so the Solomon experience, it's not just a 4-week immersion, it's sort of a life commitment, because now you have people that you care about on the other side of the world and projects in mind that you want to help improve some aspects of their life, but I found that they really enhanced mine much more than anything I could have given them.
And like Claire said, this whole fellowship presentation is just reminding me of how much that I've had family in the Solomon Islands. We were just saying, I wish I could just call Sister Loretta on the phone and be like, what's new? Because we talk to her every day about every single thing in the day. And one time I was at the hospital really late, and it was pitch black at night, and it was dangerous to walk home. I called her cell phone off the hospital phone. She was like, oh, we'll come pick you up. So Claire and like the whole diocese came in the truck at 10 at night to pick me up from the hospital, and we all rode back. So, just things like that really, really show me that I have family there. And all what we're saying is apply for the Smith Fellowship. It is amazing. It's the best experience easily by far that I've ever had in my life. And it's given me a whole new perspective. And Claire and I have come back here with just unconditional happiness. We don't seek material things as much, or we just recognize that there are other people out there and that need and that give more than they have. So I want to say thank you to the Smith Fellowship Committee and Father Rob for this incredible opportunity, for the support and the love and the guidance. And like we said, we're so blessed to be given this opportunity, and I hope you can experience it as well.
So if you have any questions about anything, we obviously love talking about it, so don't hesitate ever to call or email us, or after this, you can ask us any questions. So
Here
thank
are
you.
a few more pictures.
Thank you, ladies, very much. Anyone have questions immediately? Okay. I want to say, in the Carroll family, the Smith Fellowship is a family tradition. We've had 22 Smith Fellows in 4 years. We've had 2 members of the Carroll family among those 22 fellows. Claire's older sister, Patricia, who graduated from the college a little over a year ago, was a Smith Fellow in Kenya in 2 summers ago, correct? Yes, so it's a Carroll family tradition. Kayla wants to be a physician's assistant, and her applications so far are proving very fruitful, and she's told me that when she has spoken with the interviewers in these various programs about her experiences in the Solomon Islands, that's sealed the deal, and the acceptance comes very quickly. So anyway, I thank both of you again. I thank everyone who's presented this evening, and I thank all of you for being here. Take some snacks, and I'm going to call upon Eric, maybe. You want to go over and get a couple kids from campus ministry and come back and take the leftover snacks? Okay? You know, just, they're paid for, so you kids might as well eat them. But you're in charge of that. Thank you so very much.